On the right, we got Mark, Rug Delver versus Delver Blade.
All right, so an interesting thing, Rug Delver has been a mainstay of this format for quite a long time. Little bit knocked off its perch by Deathrite Shaman. Gerard Fabiano is kind of playing the newest incarnation of Delver. It's the blue-white-red Delver Blade, trying to be more resistant to things like Graveyard Hate and Deathrite Shaman. But will it be actually good in the mirror, where it has less time? Remember, instead of Tarmogoyf and Nimble Mongoose, it has a little more expensive cards in the form of Geist of St. Traft and Stoneforge Mystic.
Gerard Fabiano fetches up a Volcanic Island. He's got the beginning of this. As the #1 seed, he will have choice on whether to play or draw.
You know, and the Delver Mirror in Legacy is probably the single matchup where this play draw rule in top 8 matters the most. Remember, both these decks really like playing in front. None of them like playing catch up. Just being able to go first is a huge advantage in the matchup.
One of the big reasons is the card Stifle. Both of these decks running for Stifle. It's so dangerous. You can see Gerard, without even casting anything on turn 1, sacrificed his land to avoid a Stifle. And Mark Rankin has that fetch land in play. He could be stifled if he tries to ever go for a fetch. Here's the first fetch. Gerard says, and Mark waits. He knows. He knows.
Gerard is the kind of player, if you've ever watched him play, whether or not he has the Stifle, there's going to be a pause here. There's going to be a bit of acting going on. Certainly a lot of showmanship. That way to really not give his opponent a read. But here he actually has it.
Mark Rankin, with Gerard tapped out, I would be unsurprised to see him fetch with the other in response. There it is. Will we see a card like Daze?
Yeah, Mark does have a Daze in hand, and I really like how he's played both these fetches to get around Stifle. In the matchup, I couldn't think, this is one of the better uses for Daze. Being able to preserve a land I can't say just how important it is.
One of the things that I love about Legacy is how much it rewards successfully chosen plays. And if you don't know how the matchup plays out, if you don't know the cards in a deck, you can walk right into a card like Stifle. And Mark, he did not at all fall for it. But that doesn't mean the Stifle's not going to happen. There's still a fight underway.
All right, so we see even Mark, once he does get his land, he's going to Lightning Bolt the Grim Lavamancer. That's going to reset the board. Mark's playing a little bit of catch-up here, being the player who went second. But if he can keep the board clear, that extra card will help him pull back in.
We see the Daze. That is a Daze on that Stifle. A second Daze comes from Gerard Fabiano. What a stack here.
So we have a Lightning, so what we originally thought was a Daze was a fetch for land. He went Lightning Bolt at the Grim Lavamancer. And now we do see, a Daze coming in at a Stifle. This is the play we talked about earlier when Gerard had the Stifle. It's happening a little bit out of sequence. Basically in between of this dazing of the Stifle, there was a Lightning Bolt on the Grim Lavamancer. And Gerard does Daze back. So because of the casting of that Lightning Bolt, now Mark Rankin didn't have the extra mana to pay for Gerard's Daze. What that means is of those 2 lands Mark Rankin had, the first one was one of them was picked up to his Daze, and the second one in the end was stifled by Gerard's Stifle. So in the end, Mark does get land destruction, and I think it's because of going for that Grim Lavamancer that all this has happened.
That was a very, very ambitious Lightning Bolt. It did set up that Daze. Now we're waiting to see how Gerard comes out of this. Stoneforge Mystic.
Right.
Wow.
We talked about how being in front on the board is important. This is a pretty big board presence. 2 lands and Stoneforge Mystics to Mark Rankin's permanent free board. I imagine this is going to bait a Force of Will. It's a little bit of a tentative Force of Will. Remember, if there's a Daze in Fabiano's hand, that's going to be a back-breaking Daze.
If you were an old school 5-color player, you know the rule. No permanence, no talking. Of course, we're playing Legacy here.
All right, so the Force of Will does resolve, which means Rankin's going to get a chance to recover here. He's maybe going to try to put one of his own threats on the board, as we see a pair of Tarmogoyfs in his hand, accompanied by a Wasteland and a couple more lands.
Now, wasting here could cut Gerard off from mana that is very important to him, but Mark still has nothing on the table. He goes for it. He's hoping that Gerard won't be able to lay a Delver or a Grim Lavamancer, or perhaps another 2-drop if he's got a land in his hand.
I think the biggest thing he's playing around there is if he doesn't waste there's a chance that Gerard plays a 3rd land and lands a Geist of St. Traft. If he's able to do that, that is really bad news for Mark Rankin.
Gerard passes the turn after laying a Misty Rainforest, and Mark adds a Volcanic Island before passing the turn.
Yeah, this is a situation you see a lot in Delver matchups where basically there's a lot of early game action as both players fight over lands, and then there's kind of like a pause in the middle of this fight as both players recover and finally actually play lands on this table, and then they return for round 2 of the fight in the second half of the game when they start playing threats again.
This is really common for all, I think, of the Delver style mirrors, whether it's Rug Delver, Red-Blue Delver. In this case, this Delver Blade list is just one of those natural reactions with so much efficient removal, so many efficient counter spells. It's hard to keep something that's sticking on the table.
Yeah, so we see a Wasteland from Gerard, bringing Mark Rankin back down to 0 permanents. In these situations, you know, Wasteland can be really backbreaking here, but because neither player has been able to stick a threat, these Wastelands are really not gaining the normal advantage they gain. What each player is doing is challenging the other player on land drops. You know, basically saying, did you keep enough lands here? You know, if you don't, you're gonna pay the price by being landlocked out of the game. But if you did, then we'll just keep playing, we'll reset and basically resume the game next turn. We do see a Ponder from Gerard. He keeps 1 card off the Ponder, then he shuffles, presumably not liking the other 2 cards, to crack his fetch land for a Tundra. I imagine he may have found something like a Delver of Secrets, and we do see Delver. Remember though, this Delver's not set up as he did shuffle after the Ponder. Or sorry, he cracked a fetch land after the Ponder.
And we see Mark Rankin follow suit. He has a Delver of his own. Yep. Delver versus Delver, 2 lands to 1 land. Will Fabiano have a 3rd land and a Geist? Oh, look at that though, a flip Lightning Bolt, so good right now.
A pretty timely Lightning Bolt there. Remember, both players have struggled to keep permanents on the board. Gerard really wants to establish himself as the only person with a creature, and this Lightning Bolt so far makes him that person.
Okay, back to Mark. Taking 3, nothing on the table. He really needs to get something going. A main phase brainstorm, tapped out. A Daze could be pretty good here. There it is.
And you see that Daze. Gerard, basically, and I think you can almost trace this advantage all the way back to Gerard winning the die roll. To Gerard going first. He has been up a land almost the entire game thanks to being on the play. That land helped him get the Stifle early on to get a land destruction, and he's been riding that 1 mana advantage the entire game.
You know, I think another thing to think about, Mark Rankin, when he's rewatching this, might look at that Lightning Bolt and think to himself, maybe I should have waited for that one.
Yeah, there was that Lightning Bolt, so there was that play, which, you know, Gerard was able to make because he was ahead, and then he was able to get that Stifle off. Like I said, this mana advantage is being pressed really hard. He's going to go for a Grim Lavamancer. Mark will go down to 4 to Force of Will It, but he may just be too far behind. He's going to try to make a blocker here in Tarmogoyf.
Tarmogoyf, unfortunately, does not have wings. I know the secret says the insect, and here's a bolt to finish it off.
All right, so as we see there, Gerard ends up getting ahead, and as you know, once the Delver deck gets ahead, it rarely relinquishes its lead. 1 game to 0, Gerard is up.
Right. Now we're going to come back to the booth and share with you some fun things. Always after our first game, we end up talking about something called trivia. That's the SCG Premium Giveaway. But just this time, well, maybe we'll do it in the future, but something special. One of the things that we did was the Mythic Madness Giveaway. That happened this weekend, where we had 7 copies of every Mythic that exists.
All right.
7 copies. They were given away to players in envelopes just like this. And you know what? Our director, Jeremy, has come over and he's given me 3 of these envelopes. Now, inside there is going to be a Mythic. I'm going to open one this round. From what I understand, you get to open one next round.
Oh my, okay.
And Cedric will get to open one in the finals, which I want you to decide my fate for me.
Do we know what's missing? You know, what hasn't been opened?
I have no idea what's
no idea at all.
I bet you there's probably, I don't know, a Tarmogoyf in here, maybe a Jace the Mind Sculptor.
All right, stop shuffling.
This one right here?
3rd one from the top.
Oh, just give me one. Okay. Okay, here we go. 1 second. 1 second.
All right, all right.
Oh, it's in a sleeve. Oh, boy. I don't even know what it's going to be. You're going to know first.
Okay. Not bad, not bad. I would say a winner.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Excellent.
I'm very happy with that. I feel pretty good. I hope that you have some good luck as well. Now, I'm a winner of Obsidat. You could be a winner at the next time we do a Gold Rush. We've done this in Vegas. We've done this elsewhere. We did it this weekend as a Mythic Madness giveaway. So, The other winners are going to be out there. The SCG Premium Giveaway. 3 months of Star City Games Premium are going to be given away to one lucky viewer out there if you tweet to us at the hashtag SCG Premium with the correct answer to a trivia question. One person amongst those who get it right will be selected to get 3 months of Star City Games Premium. In the semifinals, we'll do this again, and you get 6 months. And in the finals, normally we give away a year, but we're gonna up it up a little bit, and we're gonna give you next level deck building. Patrick Chapin, the Innovator's new ebook.
All right, so without further ado, what is our question for the round?
Okay, so one of the things that we've seen all weekend is Legacy is a very, very diverse format. In the top 8 of our Invitational.
All right, so you're gonna have to go a little bit back.
You're gonna have to go back.
We're not talking about the current Open.
Right. What deck was represented by 4 players? 4 players in the Legacy portion from our top 8.
I would say easily the highest performing Legacy deck of the Invitational. Placed 4 players in the top 8. Remember, they didn't actually battle within the top 8 as we had a standard top 8, but it was a very well performing deck. 4 of the players used it. You can find the deck lists and a recap of the Invitational top 8 in the coverage page of StarCityGames.com right on the main page.
Now, 4 players, hashtag SCG Premium. What deck had 4 players playing it on their road to the top 8 of the Star City Games Invitational in Legacy? Now, in this event, we're gonna go back to our players in that we have 8 different archetypes in our Legacy Open.
Right.
Which is pretty awesome. Gerard Fabiano wins game 1. His opponent with Rug Delver. What do you think Rug Delver is going to do in this matchup? He got beaten pretty bad by that Stifle Wasteland situation.
Well, and I think in a lot of ways this is, although it's not actually a mirror, they play different creatures, I think it functions in a mirror as far as what's important. What Mark needs to do is he needs to, just play this matchup safe. He needs to make sure that he doesn't get too far behind. One thing that is very relevant, though, is where normally you'd bring in 3 submerges in this matchup for Tarmogoyfs. Remember, Gerard doesn't have Tarmogoyfs, and more importantly, he doesn't have forests.
Gerard Fabiano, you see the 1 submerge. Definitely a strong weapon against the forests that Mark Rankin has in his deck. Tarmogoyf, hard to answer. Submerge can take care of a Tarmogoyf. Particularly awesome if your opponent fetches. You can respond, submerge, and goodbye Tarmogoyf forever.
Yeah, so typically in a Delver mirror, the cards you see sideboarded are Red Elemental Blasts and Pyroblasts and Submerge. Both players have 2 Red Blast or Pyroblast, really, very similar cards. Gerard has only 1 Submerge. He'll almost certainly use it. Mark's Submerges won't be very useful here. Outside of that, there aren't too many cards that we typically see come in this matchup from their sideboards.
One of the things that usually happens in the grind or the Force of Wills go away. It's not a very good grindy card, but Swords to Plowshares is a possibility, certainly. It's not very good when you're giving your opponent a lot of life in a race, but you know what? You don't necessarily care if you're going to get rid of a Tarmogoyf you can't otherwise kill.
Yeah, I think because both players are usually so short on mana in this matchup, it has that, it has the really important quality in the matchup, and that it costs 1, and then it 1 for 1s. I imagine Gerard will bring in his 4th Swords to Plowshares.
And now we're going to find out how they do it. Mark Rankin has a choice. He chooses to play.
So I almost feel like when I watch Rug Delver mirrors, it's almost like a tennis match in that you measure it in break points. Each player when they're on the play is at such a strong advantage. To win the match, a player, to get ahead, a player really has to break the other person, try to win one on the draw.
And here we have, it looks like a mulligan. Mark Rankin, one of the things I do like, he took some time, he thought about it, put it back, said, no, that's not good enough. A lot of players don't mulligan enough. And, it's kind of funny that I say that because Gerard Fabiano, whether it's deserved or not, has a reputation for keeping it almost no matter what.
I believe one of the quotes that has been associated with Gerard is that he'd rather lose than mulligan. I've heard him say that about Magic before, and I've actually seen him when we actually watched him in the top 8 of Grand Prix Charlotte. We really saw that play out in some of his matches. Basically keeping anything with lands and spells better than the 6-card hand.
Mark Rankin down to 6. Gerard Fabiano giving it a nice shuffle there. If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Matthias Hunt. This is the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational. The Invitational is in the books. We also have a Standard Open in the books. The champions of both of those played for their standard deck, Jund. And now we're on to Legacy. Here we have another mulligan from Mark Rankin.
And that's going to be pretty dangerous for him. Gerard's going to be able to muscle him a little bit with resources. If Gerard can just 1-for-1 using cards like Swords to Plowshares and Submerge to just keep Mark Rankin's probably 1 or maybe 2 threats off the board, then Gerard will be able to develop his own mana base and maybe move forward with threats like Stoneforge Mystic and Geist of St. Traft. Threats that, while they cost a lot of mana, Gerard may be able to build up to because he will be under less pressure from Mark in this matchup.
Okay. Mark gives his deck back one more time. He's hoping he's not going to go down to 4. That would be incredibly rough in this grindy matchup. You sideboard out Force of Will usually in this matchup because, you know what? Tossing away a card, it's a huge cost in this matchup where usually it's going to be 1 card for 1 card for 1 card.
Exactly. So when you're on Mark's side, what you can hope to have is, well, there's a couple things. Because he's on the play, his lands are safe. He actually only needs to have 1 or 2 lands to make the deck function. If he can just get 1 or 2 lands and have a really good spell density, he can virtually have more cards every time Gerard draws an extra land.
We've got a word from the rest of the floor on that top 8. Our first game is in, besides this match, that is John Karpaska wins the first game against William Jensen. That's Death and Taxes winning game 1 against Sneak and Show. Talking to Jensen before this top 8 began, he said, you know what? This could be a nightmare for me. Death and Taxes, that's going to be a hard one.
Yeah, there's a lot of weapons that Death and Taxes uses against Sneak and Show. Even things like putting Mangara of Corindor in off a sneak attack can be really rough for a Sneak and Show player.
And John Karpaska has 4 Karakas. Yeah, I know. 4 Karakas. We see turn 1 land versus turn 1 land Delver. Gerard Fabiano with extra cards already ahead.
All right, so on turn 2, it looks like Mark Rankin has drawn a Delver of Secrets of his own. He's going to go ahead. He has drawn a Wasteland. He can decide whether or not he wants to fight the Resource War. It'll be interesting to see if he wastes here. He chooses to. I was saying the reason is that he may not want to play a Resource War.
Because he's so far down?
Because he's so far down on cards. You know, if Gerard wastelands back, if they start getting this land where they start taking each other's lands, it'll be really hard for Mark to keep pace.
There's 2 schools of thought here, right? One is playing to the reality of the board. The reality being, you know what, and you're exactly what you just expected. That happened. The reality being you're down cards, a Resource War seems like a bad idea. The other school of thought is, you know what, I'm down cards, let's get lucky, let's roll the dice.
You know, and I think there is one advantage here, is that Gerard, if he has the Wasteland, is going to waste the Volcanic Island no matter what. And as we know, a colorless land is hardly a land in Delver.
Mark Rankin, while Gerard is tapped out, takes this opportunity to find a tropical island and passes the turn. His Delver does not know the secret. The insectile aberration on Gerard's side has found out what it is and is going to be able to fly in for 3.
And as you remember, that Delver of Secrets flipped off a Lightning Bolt. If Gerard can find a red source, he can get ahead on the board, get parity on lands, and still with that extra card in his hand from Mark's Mulligans, would be able to get a pretty strong advantage.
We see a Swords to Plowshares, I believe an Engineered Explosives, a Grim Lava Mancer, a Tundra. Gosh, he's got all kinds of weapons here. During your upkeep, I have an effect, says Gerard.
So after he chose not to flip the Delver...
So yeah, you didn't reveal anything? Okay, let's Swords that guy.
Interesting, and so Gerard chose to do this during Mark's turn as opposed to doing it during his own turn.
Yeah, he wants to try to make Mark Rankin be put to the test on a Daze or a Spell Pierce now and commit during his own turn before an untap can happen.
Okay. It looks like Mark's just going to let the swords happen. He goes up to 14, but now he is behind on the board. He's going to need a threat.
Fetch land. He's got a Tarmogoyf in hand.
Yep, and I think with the amount of trading that goes on, the Tarmogoyf is going to be pretty big. It's still not going to race the Delver yet, because we know Gerard has a Lightning Bolt and is already 6 points ahead in the race. Mark will need a removal spell for the Delver to really be able to race it, but if he can, I think he may be able to pull the race back in his favor.
And if Gerard Fabiano does have a sideboard Engineered Explosives, 1 land would mean he'd be able to put an Engineered Explosives for 2 onto the table.
Yeah, so we see what's left in Mark's hand. It looks like we know he has a Stifle. The other card right now is unknown, so he'll have somewhat of a defense against an Engineered Explosives, but he has no defense right now for Insectile Aberration, which hits him for another 3 damage.
There's the fetch land. Gerard, main phase, sacrifices that. He's going to get another land out of his deck, increase the number of colors that he has access to. There's a Volcanic.
All right, so now maybe we'll see if he makes that play. He has a lot of options on 2. Gerard has a Stoneforge Mystic. He has that Engineered Explosives you mentioned. He has a Grim Lavamancer. He has a Lightning Bolt. He has a lot of different options he can take here. And actually, if I'm looking at the graveyards, I believe graveyards are all just instants and lands.
Wow, I mean, one of the things you can do, unlock the accomplishment. You just bolted a Tarmogoyf and it died. That does not happen very often.
Not at all. So Gerard continues the hits, dropping Mark to 7. And now he is getting Mark is getting dangerously close to 0 life.
Oh, unload, says Gerard Fabiano.
And Mark with a draw, you know he has a Stifle. We know he's drawn a Flusterstorm out of the board, and it looks like he has Life from the Loam as well. He has, that Life from the Loam oftentimes comes in so that you can continually wasteland your opponent. It's a pretty good grinding mechanism for the mirror, but it's hard to outgrind someone when they have 3 creatures to your 0, especially in this matchup.
I mean, I love to grind, but you can't grind when you're dead. And he says that's it.
All right, so Gerard Fabiano moves to 10 wins, 0 losses, 1 intentional draw on the day, stays undefeated as our number 1 seed, and moves swiftly into the semifinals.
Now our backup match for this, William Jensen with Sneak and Show and John Karpaska. Those 2 players, William Jensen, John Karpaska, they are quite different. So we've got a Sneak and Show deck combo